Ever been there? You know that moment when someone you really counted on, they just dropped the ball? Or maybe you just get this feeling, this creeping sense that, honestly, people can be, well, a real letdown sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a universal human thing, isn't it? That
Yeah.
that little sting of disappointment when someone you trusted or maybe admired doesn't quite live up to what you expected.
Right. And today, we're not just going to nod along. We're actually going deep on this feeling. We really want to unpack the why. Why does disappointment happen? And what's actually going on under the surface when we feel like people are, consistently falling short.
Yeah. And our main guide for this exploration is this really insightful document. It's titled, Do People Suck?
Mm.
It gives us a great framework, I think, for understanding just how complex human interactions are, and importantly, the expectations we bring into them.
Exactly. So, for you listening, our learner, the mission today is pretty clear. Let's get to the heart of why disappointment hurts so much. We'll look at the common mental traps we fall into when we feel let down.
And crucially, equip you with some practical tools.
Mm.
Tools for self-reflection, and maybe finding healthier ways to look at relationships.
Yeah, we want to move past that sort of knee-jerk, ugh, people suck
Right.
reaction and really dig into all the nuances, rightly.
Get to-
Okay, so let's start unpacking. What is it about disappointment that makes it feel so, well, painful?
Well, the document highlights a few key things. First off, there's this expectation-reality gap. We put emotional capital into relationships, trust, hope, loyalty.
Yeah, you invest.
Exactly, you invest. So when the other person doesn't meet those expectations, it feels like a direct hit, almost like a personal injury to that investment.
That's a really good way to frame it, a hit to your emotional investment, like putting coins in a machine and getting nothing back.
Precisely. And then there's the psychological safety aspect.
Hmm.
We're fundamentally wired, biologically wired, for connection, for feeling safe in those connections.
Okay.
So disappointment, particularly when trust is broken, can feel like a real betrayal. It messes with that feeling of safety.
So it triggers our defenses, like anger or sadness.
Exactly. Those emotions, anger, sadness, even that cynical feeling, they're protective mechanisms. Our brain trying to shield us from more hurt.
So it's more than just, oh, that didn't go as planned. It feels like a threat on some level.
On a deep level, yes.
Mm.
A threat to our emotional security. And there's another layer, too. Our identity.
How so?
Well, we often see parts of ourselves reflected in the people we choose to trust or admire. So when they fail, it can weirdly feel like a judgment on us.
Oh, right. Like it questions our own ability to judge character.
Exactly. That pang of, how could I have been so wrong about this person?
Yeah, I've definitely felt that. It stings.
It really does. And the document then draws lines from these very personal hurts to much broader implications. Like, think about broken trust. On an individual level, it hurts, but multiply that across society.
And you get widespread public distrust, like in governments or institutions.
That's what it suggests, yeah. That individual erosion can weaken the whole social fabric.
And what about that identity piece? If our judgment feels off, how does that play out bigger picture? Could that fuel cynicism?
It's a compelling idea. The document links that shaken sense of personal judgment, that violated identity, to potential outcomes like cynicism, wanting to pull away, isolate.
Maybe even hyper-individualism, like I can only count on myself.
Right, that feeling that you have to go it alone because trusting others is just too risky.
That definitely taps into some current societal vibes, doesn't it? What about predictability, that feeling that you just don't know what people will do next?
When disappointment becomes a pattern, it chips away at our sense of predictability. We start feeling like we can't rely on things, on people.
Yeah.
And the document links this loss of predictability to increases in anxiety and depression.
Because we need some baseline of stability to feel okay.
We do. Constant uncertainty is exhausting and stressful. And finally, there's the social standing aspect, being let down, especially publicly.
Oh, the humiliation factor, yeah.
It taps into a really deep-seated fear of rejection, of being pushed out of the group, which, evolutionarily speaking, was a huge threat.
Right, survival depended on the group, so that fear is still wired in.
Very much so.
Okay, wow. So disappointment isn't trivial. It hits us on multiple levels. Emotional investment, safety, identity, predictability, social standing. Makes sense why it hurts.
Yeah, it's fundamental.
So let's shift gears a bit. Why do we sometimes make that massive leap from, okay, this person let me down, to that big sweeping generalization? People just, what's going on in our heads there?
Well, the document points to some classic cognitive biases. Our brains are amazing pattern recognition machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes too amazing.
Right.
Meaning,
Yeah.
even one really significant disappointment, or maybe a couple close together, can get overgeneralized. Our brain takes a shortcut. Danger. People are unreliable. It's trying to protect us from future pain.
Like a mental alarm system going off, maybe a bit too loudly. Seen this pattern, avoid all humans.
Sort of, yeah. It's an overgeneralization. And another mechanism the document mentions is self-righteous protection.
Self-righteous. Okay, what's that?
It's basically feeling morally superior.
Yeah.
Thinking, well, I wouldn't do that. Everyone else is the problem. It can be a defense mechanism.
Ah, so it feels better to be slightly angry and judgmental than to feel vulnerable or maybe admit our own part in it.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
shields the ego. It can be easier than facing our own vulnerability or contribution.
Makes sense. And what else?
Then there are these isolation loops. Disappointment can make us withdraw, right? Or maybe we swing the other way and set our expectations incredibly high, almost daring people to fail.
Which then sets us up for more disappointment.
Precisely. It becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. You expect the worst, you act in ways that might elicit it, you see it happen, and boom, belief confirmed. See, people do suck.
Oof, that's a tough loop to break. The document also links these mental tricks to wider social stuff, right? Like that simplification thing, viewing everyone as potentially bad.
Yeah, it suggests that in really chaotic or unstable environments, that kind of quick, maybe harsh categorization might actually have served a survival purpose historically. Quick judgments were safer than careful consideration.
Interesting, like a wartime mentality almost. And what about outsourcing pain, blaming everyone else? How does that connect culturally?
The source links that tendency to externalize blame, to avoid looking inward. With cultures that maybe lean more towards narcissistic traits, valuing external success and image above all else, deflecting blame protects that image.
Okay. And confirmation bias, only seeing evidence that confirms what we already think. Social media must pour fuel on that fire, right?
Absolutely. The algorithms often feed us more of what gets a reaction, and often that's negative, outrage-inducing stuff. So if you already think people are generally disappointing, your feed might just keep showing you examples of that, making it seem even more true.
So our own biases get amplified. Wow. Okay, so we see why it hurts, and we see why our brains might generalize. But here's the million-dollar question. How do we figure out if the problem is genuinely them? Or if maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with us, our perspective, our expectations?
Right, this is crucial, and the document offers a really practical tool here, the sort of checklist for self-reflection. It's a series of questions to ask ourselves.
Okay, I'm ready. What's first?
First, patterns. Is this disappointment a one-off thing, an isolated incident? Or are you seeing a similar pattern pop up again and again across different relationships, different contexts?
That's a big one. Because if it's happening everywhere, maybe the common denominator isn't them.
Exactly. It's worth considering at least. Second question, feedback. Have you ever gotten similar feedback from people you trust? Multiple sources saying something about how you approach relationships or maybe your expectations.
Ooh, that requires some humility, doesn't it? To actually listen to that kind of feedback.
It does. It can be tough to hear, but potentially incredibly valuable if several trusted people are seeing the same thing.
Okay, what's next on the checklist?
An empathy check. Basically ask yourself, are the standards you're applying to this other person fair? Would you want to be held to that same standard under similar circumstances? Are you allowing for their humanity, their situation?
Checking for double standards. That's good. Like, am I expecting perfection when I'm far from perfect myself?
Precisely. Then comes the expectation audit. Were your expectations actually reasonable, considering who this person is, what they're capable of, what their life looks like right now? Or were you maybe setting the bar unrealistically high?
Yeah, expecting someone who's always scattered to suddenly become hyper-organized, maybe? Or expecting instant replies from someone going through a crisis.
Exactly those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And the final checkpoint is ownership. What part, however small it might seem, did you play in this situation? Was communication unclear? Did you make assumptions? Did you fail to set a boundary earlier on?
That's vital. It's so easy to just point fingers, but usually there's something we could have done differently, even if it's just how we reacted.
Right. And the document stresses, if you go through this checklist and realize, maybe I am the common denominator here, it's not about beating yourself up.
It's a growth opportunity.
Exactly. It's a chance to learn, adjust your approach, maybe develop some new skills in communication or boundary setting.
Yeah.
But conversely, if you honestly assess things and conclude It wasn't primarily you.
Then it validates your discernment, your ability to see the situation clearly.
Yes, without necessarily jumping to, therefore, all people suck,
Yeah.
which just means this situation, this person was genuinely disappointing.
The document gives some concrete examples too, right? Like under impossibly high standards.
Yeah, it mentions things like expecting instant, perfect communication from friends dealing with major life stress. That kind of rigidity often comes from our own stuff, maybe old wounds around feeling neglected or needing excessive reassurance.
And the feedback point, getting the same note from multiple people.
It highlights the idea of the wisdom of crowds almost. If several unconnected, trusted people gently point out a pattern in how you interact, it carries more weight than one person's opinion. It's worth listening to.
Okay. And projecting our own flaws, like getting mad at someone for being late when we're often late too.
That's a classic. We criticize in others what we don't like or haven't dealt with in ourselves. It protects the ego in the short term, but really blocks growth and understanding.
Right. So, okay, let's say we've done the self-reflection. We've used the checklist. And we realize, okay, sometimes, yeah, my perspective or my actions are part of the issue. How do we handle that realization without just feeling defensive or, arrogant about always being right before? How do we cultivate some humility?
That's a great question. The document offers some really practical ways to approach this, to limit that potential arrogance. First is practicing intellectual humility,
Meaning?
consciously reminding yourself, probably don't have the full picture here. There are always other perspectives, factors you might not be aware of. Just holding that possibility open.
Keeps you from jumping to conclusions too fast.
Okay.
Second, seek to understand before judging. Even when you feel wronged, make a genuine effort. Try to figure out the other person's motivations, the context they were operating in. It's not about excusing bad behavior.
What about understanding it?
Yes. Understanding can soften the sharp edges of your own judgment, your own anger. It allows for more nuance.
Trying to see their why. That makes sense. What else?
Forgive yourself for blind spots. This is huge. If you realize you misjudged someone or missed warning signs, don't beat yourself up endlessly. Recognize that making errors in judgment is fundamentally human. It's not a moral catastrophe.
That's really freeing, actually. We don't have to be perfect judges of character all the time.
Not at all. And finally, the document suggests adopting what it calls soft certainty.
Soft certainty, like be confident but not rigid.
Exactly. Hold your conclusions and beliefs with confidence based on what you know now, but stay open. Be willing to update your views if new information comes along. You can be discerning without being closed-minded or harsh. I like that. It's a balance. The document also links these methods to some deeper ideas, doesn't it? Like radical accountability.
Yes, taking real ownership, maybe through journaling about your role in conflicts, it connects that to Stoicism. The Stoics emphasize focusing intensely on what's in your control, primarily your own thoughts, judgments, and responses.
So taking accountability is exercising that control.
Precisely. And for empathy stretching, really trying to imagine the pressures someone else is under. It references the philosophy of Ubuntu.
I am, because we are.
Exactly. That deep sense of interconnectedness, reminding us that understanding others' struggles is part of understanding ourselves and our shared humanity.
Beautiful. And the skeptical certainty, adding qualifiers like based on what I know now.
That echoes Socratic humility, right? The wisdom of Socrates admitting he knew very little for certain. It's about acknowledging the limits of our own knowledge, even when we feel pretty sure.
It's like leaving the door open a crack, just in case.
Exactly. A balance between conviction and openness.
Okay, great strategies for when we realize maybe we're part of the equation, but let's face it, sometimes it genuinely is the other person. Sometimes people do mess up, they betray trust, they act badly. How do we cope then? How do we navigate those situations without just falling into that pit of cynicism?
Right, because that's real too. The document offers several strategies here as well. First, acceptance over idealization. This means recognizing that everyone has their own wounds, their blind spots, their limitations. Their actions aren't always about you personally, even if they impact you personally.
Trying not to take it quite so personally, accepting their imperfections.
Yes, accepting their flawed humanity, just as we hope others accept ours. It doesn't mean liking the behavior, but accepting the reality of it. Next, redefine success in relationships.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means shifting away from the idea that the only successful relationship is one that lasts forever and is always perfect. Sometimes success is learning a valuable lesson. Sometimes it's setting a really firm, necessary boundary. Sometimes success is recognizing incompatibility and walking away cleanly.
Ah, so the win isn't always staying in the relationship. Learning or boundary setting can be the positive outcome.
Exactly. That's a really helpful reframe. Another key strategy, invest strategically.
Like, don't put all your emotional eggs in one basket.
Pretty much. Reserve your deepest levels of emotional investment, your vulnerability, your time, your energy for people who have actually earned that trust over time through consistent, reliable behavior. Be more discerning about who gets your premium emotional resources.
Treat your emotional energy like a valuable asset, basically. Don't give it away cheaply.
A great analogy. And then, crucially, protect without bitterness. Yes, protect yourself. Learn from disappointment. Be more cautious. But try to aim for what the document calls informed hope rather than just defaulting to cynicism.
Informed hope. I like that. So, realistic, but not despairing. Aware of risks, but still open to connection.
Exactly. Believing that good, trustworthy people do exist, even if you've encountered some who aren't. And finally, allow grief.
Grieve the disappointment.
Yes. When a relationship ends, or even just when a deeply held expectation about someone dies, there's a loss there. Acknowledge it. Allow yourself to feel the sadness or anger or whatever comes up. Don't just stuff it down.
Process the loss like any other loss.
Precisely. Suppressing it just leads to emotional numbness or festering resentment down the line.
These strategies also have broader connections, right? Like acceptance without excusing.
Yes, the document nods to certain Eastern philosophies, like some aspects of Buddhism perhaps, that emphasize observing reality, accepting what is, without necessarily condoning harmful actions or becoming passive. You can accept someone as flawed without excusing hurtful behavior. It informs how you set boundaries.
Okay. And selective investing, the financial parallel.
Yeah, it explicitly makes that comparison. Just like you wouldn't put all your money into one risky stock, you don't pour all your emotional trust into unproven relationships. You diversify, you assess risk, you invest based on evidence.
Makes sense. And allowing grief.
It points out that societies often have rituals for lost funerals, mourning periods. We need personal rituals too, ways to acknowledge and process the smaller deaths of relationships or expectations that don't pan out. Journaling, talking, quiet reflection, whatever works for you.
It validates that feeling of loss, which is important. Wow. You know, digging into this whole do people suck question really throws some broader societal issues into sharp relief, doesn't it?
It really does. The document touches on quite a few significant connections. Think about the workplace, for instance.
Burnout, quiet quitting.
Exactly. Repeated disappointments maybe in leadership, broken promises, lack of recognition that erodes trust and engagement. People check out emotionally even if they're still physically present. It's a symptom of widespread disappointment.
A clear sign that expectations aren't being met on a large scale.
Definitely. And then there's the rise of loneliness and general distrust in society. Studies keep showing loneliness is a massive issue.
And people seem more hesitant to trust each other.
Yes. And the document suggests this cycle of disappointment contributes to that. We put up walls to protect ourselves, which makes genuine connection harder, potentially leading to more isolation. It's a concerning trend.
Creates these invisible barriers everywhere.
And you see it reflected in culture, too. Popular media, think about shows where cynicism is almost the default setting.
Yeah, where characters are mostly out for themselves and trust is portrayed as naive or dangerous. Shows like Succession or Breaking Bad, maybe.
Those are great examples. It feels like art mirroring a kind of collective weariness or suspicion about human motives.
Like we're exploring that cynical edge as a society.
And even in spiritual or religious spheres. When leaders or institutions disappoint, it can shake people's faith, not just in the divine, but in the community itself. If that community was a main source of connection.
Losing it can deepen feelings of isolation.
Yeah. So that personal feeling of, ugh, people, isn't just personal. It connects to these bigger waves affecting our work, our communities, our sense of belonging, our trust in the world.
It really is woven into the fabric of how we interact or fail to interact.
It absolutely is.
Okay. So pulling this all together then, it seems like while disappointment is, yeah, probably an unavoidable part of being human,
Definitely.
that bigger global feeling that people suck is often more complex. It's tangled up with our expectations, those cognitive biases we talked about, maybe not having the right tools for self-reflection or for navigating tricky relationships healthily.
Well said. And hopefully for you, the learner listening today, you've gained a clearer framework. You can better understand where disappointment comes from. You've got that checklist to help evaluate your own role, and you have some new strategies, healthier, more resilient ways to cope when people inevitably don't meet expectations.
Yeah, tools to navigate the imperfections. And with that, let's wrap up with the closing thought from the source material we've been exploring. It says, if trust is the soil in which relationships grow, disappointment is the drought. Some plants survive drought, some die. But new seeds are always waiting if the soil is tended again.
That's powerful. And the summary quote leaves us with this. People disappoint you, you will disappoint yourself. Neither fact needs to destroy your hope, your kindness, or your dignity. Expect imperfection, forgive wisely, invest selectively, and grow anyway.
Expect imperfection, forgive wisely, invest selectively, and grow anyway. Lots to chew on there. So, take some time. Think about what really landed for you in this deep dive. How might you use these ideas, this framework, when you encounter disappointment next? This conversation is really just a starting point for a deeper understanding. Keep exploring.